Hey, welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. This is episode number 56, and I've got none other than the Andrew Marotta. I think I said that correct. Is that I was saying the East Coast accent. I don't have it down, but Andrew Marotta, correct?
You nailed it, Jared. A lot of Marotta. You nailed it.
So Andrew and I have been talking a little bit before the show. Andrew is the principal at Port Jervis High School in Port Jervis, New York. Is that correct?
Spot on.
And Andrew he's got a lot of things going, which we're going to dig into here. He's got a couple books which I read his first one and really enjoyed it, and just some great tips for school leaders. He's got a second one coming out here soon, which I'm excited to kind of talk about with him and kind of hear about that. He's doing he's been doing some more consulting work, some speaking engagements, which we'll talk about a little bit too. So let me make sure I got this right here. So you've been at Port Jervis High School for 16 years, assistant principal for 7 years, and principal for the last 9. Is that correct?
That's correct. My first day on the job, Jared, April Fool's Day, 2005. The city was underwater. It was a flood. School was out for a week, and I saw this community come together like none other, and I fell in love with it in that moment because it was a crisis. We're in a crisis now. That was a crisis, and I saw people come together to help one another, and I've been here ever since.
So you said your first day on the job was April? Is that correct?
April. I came in mid-year. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, maybe how did that happen? Maybe tell us that. I'm curious. How did that?
Yeah.
You don't usually hear about principals or administrators starting April Fool's Day. So
sure. Yeah. No. And when I told the other school I was leaving, they thought it was a joke. They thought I was, kidding. But Port Jervis is in Orange County, New York. It's about an hour and a half northwest of New York City. I grew up in New York City. You might be able to hear a little bit of an accent. People tell me that.
A little bit.
And I loved it. I loved where I grew up, Staten Island, the forgotten borough, but a borough in New York City. And I was fortunate. I grew up in a big Italian family, Jared. And I had an experience. I went to a small college in North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina. And it just opened my eyes. And we have these paradigm shifts in our lives. My college buddy, Kevin Spanauer, he's a principal in North Carolina, great leader. We're friends in college. It's my freshman year. We go to his house outside Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And he pulls in the house, turns the car off, and he leaves the keys in the ignition. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "You left your keys there." He goes, "I know." I said, "Well, why would you leave your keys in the ignition?" And he looked at me and he said, "Why wouldn't I?" And for a New Yorker, that was like, what? And I told myself in that moment, my freshman year of college, I want to live in a place where I can do that. So if you're watching this show and you want to steal my car, you can do it because they're in the car. So that's the community where I live in Milford, Pennsylvania, as well as Port Jervis. So I was moving from Staten Island up here. And I was trying to get a job because I wanted to live close to where I work. That was a life goal. That was a life plan for my wife and I. I didn't want to have a long commute. Again, I grew up in Staten Island. So many people, Jared, take that New York City ferry every day. And it's a half hour on the boat. You're on the subway. You're walking. You're here. So people are looking at an hour-plus commute just to get to Manhattan, which is probably 4 miles away as the crow flies, straight. But so it's just, I didn't want to have a long commute. So long story short, I applied and I got a job. So I came, it was an interim job in April. And by May 15th, they hired me full time. So.
Wow. Now, was that the assistant principal position then, or?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I came in. Here's another story of that day, memorable. I came in. You want to do a great job in the interview, put your best foot forward. Well, the radio was on the desk, and the principal, there's a fight in the cafeteria. Well, he jumped up, and I jumped up, and he's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going with you." And it was just a reaction, Jared. Right? We're all helping, right? We want to help. How can I help? And it just instinct, I jumped up, and he said, as soon as I did that, he told me afterwards that I had the job.
That's all. Well, I mean, that shows a lot. If you're willing to jump into action there in your interview, I mean, how are you, that's kind of a time. I mean, and that's awesome that you had the personality that's just gonna like, hey, I'm here to help. I'm gonna do what needs to be done here. Regardless if I work here or not, I'm gonna make sure we're doing what's best for kids. So that's awesome, man. And I didn't even get to your last bullet here. I apologize. I mentioned you got a lot of stuff going on here. You've got the website, you've got the blog, the podcast, which we're going to get into. You got and you're all over Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all over the place. So, we kind of started a little bit about your first year as administrator. We talked about, you had that late, right when that it sounded like the flood there in April. But as you reflect on that, what went well, maybe that first 2 or 3 months on the job, or maybe that first year and a quarter, what went well for you? What are the things you had naturally? And then what were your biggest struggles?
Yeah. Great question, Jared. I'm a worker. My dad owned his own pharmacy. We all worked in it. We took the bus, the public bus to school. I took 4 buses to high school. So I went to high school in Brooklyn. We were workers, and if we got in trouble, the punishment wasn't sit in your room. The punishment was you go paint the side of the house. You go fix this. I got in trouble a few times, but we were workers. So when I got here, I walked fast. I talked fast. I was in classrooms. I got to know people. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do a good job. One of the first things I saw, I was like, there was smoke everywhere. I went to Catholic school, right? If I ever touched a cigarette, they would have broke my hand. Like, no way. But there was smoke everywhere. And I'm like, who's allowing these people to smoke? And everybody was just like, it's just, that's what they do. It's Port Jervis. I'm like, no. I was in the bathrooms. I was over here. I was going to the smoke shop saying, hey, stop selling the kids cigarettes. And it was a problem, and I tried to fix it. That was, we worked hard at that. And that was something that, just finding the work, right? I was out and about. So I was new to the place. So I didn't know what couldn't be done. I didn't know, I just worked hard, and people liked that. People got into that, and it worked. So those were some things that again, we eliminated smoking here. People told me they would never, ever get rid of that.
I remember, okay, I'm behind the scenes here. I'm trying to Google search it real quick. I mean, that was a big, I appeared on Andrew's show, a few months ago. And I remember kind of Google searching him, seeing what he was all about, seeing all this cool stuff. Am I correct in thinking, I'm taking a leap of faith here, was there a news article about you, like in the stores, like really trying to help crack down on smoking in the community? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was, right. And people, again, I believe in you sending your message out, right? If you're not pushing your message out, somebody else will, right? And this was good work we were doing. We connected with local agencies to try to combat this smoking, right? We got signage. We got there was a sign on every door, not don't smoke, not this, but proud to be smoke free. And people mocked it. People joked, we're not smoke free. Sure. We became smoke-free because that was the goal. We were proud to do it. And now that logo sticks around. And again, you wrote that blog about signage. I loved it. Yeah. Do not enter, but, please be mindful. The main entrance is over here. Things like that. So that was big, right? To not just say no smoking or things like that, sure, but proud to be smoke-free. But yeah, I went into the shops. Our school district still goes to local pizzerias, and they allow us to put stickers on the pizza boxes, right? Cool. Families and kids. So positive messages, drug-free messages, things like that. So that continues. That continues today. But yeah, we wanted to not just do it, but get the word out about good things happening.
Give us a little bit of more context about the Port Jervis community. How big is the community? Are you the only high school in town? Are there multiple high schools? I just love what you said about, going to the local pizza shop and putting that sticker on there and spreading positivity. Help me understand how big the city is. Is it a smaller town, bigger city? Just a little bit more detail.
Port Jervis is a small city. It's an old railroad community. There was the railroad was big years ago, and all of that business went away, and the community remains. We are the furthest from New York City that a police or fireman can work. There is still a train line. We're literally the last stop from New York City on the Metro North, as they call it. But it's a blue-collar town, Jared. It's a long-standing, small city in New York. It's on the Delaware River, and it's fed by some, smaller rivers. But it's a river community. In the summer, people are up here from all around visiting the rivers. It's a beautiful spot, again, northwest of New York City. But yeah, one high school, and again, long-standing traditions here. People, their grandfathers went here, and just I love to be outside. Today was warm here in the Northeast in the 60s. I love walking through the cemetery. People think that's a little eerie, but I look at the names on the tombstones, and I see so many names that are just synonymous with Port Jervis, and I love it. I love this community. But there's 13 schools in the county. We are the most western in the county, and we're actually on the Pennsylvania border.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I saw as I was reading through your bio is when you started at Port Jervis, the graduation rate was low 60s, and I kind of heard you, as you were talking there a little bit. Oh, that's just Port Jervis. That's just the way things are. But you guys are up to like the high 80s, it sounds like, and maybe it's even higher now. But if you were to say, a lot of schools are struggling with that graduation rate of getting kids through. What's the secret to your success?
Yeah, great question. And a school leader like yourself would notice something like that. A pet peeve of mine, Jared, is when people say, it's okay. It's okay. Like, you just cursed out a law enforcement person. Like, no, that's not okay. It's not okay. You got in trouble at school, right? You were disrespectful to a teacher. You graffitied, and you got suspended. Yeah, it's okay. And no, it's not okay. And it wasn't okay that we were losing these kids. It wasn't okay that we didn't have a grip on the enrollment and the attendance. There wasn't a tight grip on it, and we were losing kids, right? We want to make this place a place that kids are dying to get in, not they can't wait till they get out. And we cleaned up the school, the smoking, right? Kids felt comfortable that they could go to the bathroom. I believe in the broken window theory, Jared.
That was on my mind too, the broken window theory. Okay, keep going. I don't want to interrupt, but that was exactly what I was thinking.
How do they clean up bad neighborhoods and cities, right? If there's one broken window, there'll be another one. There'll be a third one. If there's an empty building and there's graffiti, there'll be more graffiti. And so we cleaned up the small crimes. No gum on the floor, no graffiti, a broken locker, it gets fixed. Vandalism was not okay. I was relentless about vandalism, smoking in the bathroom, drugs in our school, right? It's not okay that it was, it's just marijuana. He just had alcohol. Yeah. No, he's 14. That's not okay. And we were strong with that. We were consistent with that. And it wasn't good enough. And that caught momentum with a lot of people. The importance of graduating. We showed kids statistics of, hey, I know you want to go to work and you're being a tough guy because you're going to drop out and you're going to go work. Well, look how much money you're going to make if you go that route. But if you stay in high school and you earn a high school diploma and I can get you to a 2-year school to earn a degree, you can make this much. Look at that. Yep. Are you going to be better making that money or this money? Those types of conversations and things where people develop trust. Marotta went from just this this hard ass, I don't want to curse on your program, hard ass New Yorker to, wow, well, I understand why he's being hard on us. He wants us to graduate. You know what? That guy's accent is really bad, but he cares about the kids. And that's what started to happen. And it caught on, and we tightened things up. Another thing we did, Jared, I met with every kid who transferred into our district. Every kid who transferred in. Where were you coming from? Let me see your transcript. How many credits did you have? Can we get you the right classes? What were the things that were going wrong when you transferred from Iowa to Port Jervis? And now how do we correct those wrongs? And we got on the same page with them, and they got on the same page with us.
Okay.
And those were just some of the things that we did.
So you've been there for a while. I'm curious, did this transformation, this like, hey, we're going to be firm in our expectations, was that an overnight thing, or did it take a few years to take hold? Because I'm just curious how long that takes, because there's probably some administrators listening right now saying, we need to do the same thing. What can they expect?
Yeah. It's ongoing, Jared. It's still going on, right? Because what happened to cigarette smoke now? Became vapes, right? Yeah. So it's ongoing. So it's never enough. But yes, it absolutely took a long time. It took it really took a lot. It took a lot of building relationships. It took people getting on board. It took kids, getting on board. I don't like the term buy-in. I don't want people to have buy-in in the things that we are trying to do. I want people to have ownership. I love the story of the reporter that was at NASA in the 60s. And he's going around and he's interviewing the CEO and the director and all the head honchos, right? And now he's walking down the hall and he sees a maintenance man fixing something in the hallway. And he says, hey, Jared, how are you? What do you do here at NASA? And he said, I'm helping putting somebody on the moon. The maintenance man said that. So I need my cafeteria staff. I need the maintenance workers, the grounds workers. Our grounds are beautiful in Port Jervis intentionally. And our grounds guys do a great job because they know a school that looks good, kids are going to feel better. And when kids feel better about the place, they're going to do better in it and they're going to want to do it. And they're not going to treat it poorly. Again, Jared, here's another thing we did. Traditionally, when a kid misbehaves, they get a punishment, right? And what's the long-standing punishment that they've made movies about and all that kind of stuff is after-school detention, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Well, I always ask now, right? If I'm calling your home and I say, Mr. Smith, I have your son here, and he's got detention because he, he's got 2 detentions here. I can combine it into one, but would you allow your son to work with me after school for an hour tomorrow? I got some plants from the local florist, and I'd love for him to help me plant those. Can he do that instead of sitting an hour and a half for 2 days in detention? Marotta, that sounds like a great deal. He needs to work. He'll give you an hour and a half. No problem. He steps out along, you let me know. Boom. Now that kid is helping me tomorrow plant those flowers. So what happens? Other kids see that happening. And they might come over and say, hey, can I do that? I'd like to volunteer. Can I help? But that kid also does it. And that kid who was getting in trouble the day before now planted it. He looks at the plants and says, man, those look beautiful. And the next day at lunch, he said, hey, Jared, look, I planted that, right? And if he sees Mike grabbing the plant, do you think he's going to say, yeah, Mike, pull the plant out or rip it or knock the pot over? He's going to say, hey, Jared, stop touching the plant. I planted that. That's ownership, right? I'm not telling, hey, kids, don't mess the flowers. Jared owned those flowers because Jared did it. But it was a relationship with Jared's father that said, hey, yeah, you can absolutely do that because that's considered corporal punishment if you make them do it. You can't make them do it. You offer to do it, but then you see the benefits, and that becomes contagious.
Sure. So those of you who are watching on YouTube, you can see the sign behind Andrew there. Those of you who are listening on the podcast, you can't see it, but you've got a sign that has hashtag surviving and thriving. And that's kind of like when I look at your website, which is awesome. I really enjoyed my time just kind of looking at your videos and all your different things you got going. But clearly survive and thrive is kind of that slogan or whatever you want to say. That's kind of like your niche. What does that mean? where did that come from?
Yeah. Yeah, Jared, and thank you. And I want to give a shout out to Catskill Marketing. Those are my guys. They did my website. They take care of my stuff. When I get cool videos like this, I send it to my guy Matt at Catskill Marketing, and he does it. So if you like the website, check them out, Catskill Marketing. But Jared, I'm a school leader. I'm a parent. I was a college referee. I refereed college basketball. I loved it. I was into that. And then I got invited to a professor's class, Dr. Rob Gilbert at Montclair State University. I love Dr. Rob. He's become a great friend and mentor, but this was back in late 2015, early 2016. And I went and spoke at his class, and he loved it. He loved what I did. I presented on leadership in sports. I presented on being a referee and a school leader, and he loved it. And we connected, and he handed me 10 books when I left. And he said, I was like, wow, Doc, oh my God. He handed me 10 books. 2 of them were his. And he said, where's your book? I'm like, Doc, I don't have a book. I'm a referee. I'm a principal. I'm a father. Like, I don't have time to go to the bathroom. I can't write a book. He's like, you can write a book. You have to write a book. You're an amazing principal. What you did tonight was awesome. And I was like, huh. He said, Andrew, you don't have to write the book. He said, just write down the tips. Just write down the things you do as a principal. And I got ADD, Jared. It drives me. It's not a disability. It's a blessing. It's a superpower. I did talk to text on the way home, and I had 70 of those tips. The next day, I had 30 more. So in less than 24 hours, I had 100. And then the book formed, right? And then so I had this book, and I was like, wow, what am I going to do? What am I going to call? And I kicked around different ideas. But that's what it is, Jared. I'm a parent. In the last week, both of my kids went to hand specialists. My kid broke their finger. I'm running here. I'm doing this. Like that's life, right? You look at some families and they got the beautiful picture, right? And everything looks perfect. The flowers, the guy's not, the wife is beautiful. And you look and you say, they got it perfect. No, they don't. Nobody has it perfect, right? It's never perfect. I love reading your stuff, Jared. That blog you wrote a couple weeks ago, No Soup for You. You talked about Jerry Seinfeld putting the time in, the important time, the right time. Well, you're doing that as a school leader, right? Exercise, reading. You charted your time and you put it in there. You're showing how to go from surviving and thriving. But people might look at Dr. Jared Smith and say, oh, he's got it easy. He's got it perfect. He's in great shape. He reads. He eats well. It's not easy, and it's not perfect. And I'm sure Jared has gone through surviving times where he felt like he was just surviving. But the goal is to be thriving in the work we're doing. The goal is to have educational leaders be thriving in their jobs so they can serve kids, so kids can have a great experience because they got a great school leader. Right? When there's somebody who's so enthusiastic about the school, kids can't help but like that. Teachers can't help but say, wow, that guy really cares. So that's my goal, is to have school leaders feel that, because a lot of school leaders are struggling, Jared. It wasn't always easy for me. I felt like I was on a highway when I started and things were just flying by me. And again, kids were smoking and fighting and cutting class. And, I got a hold on that. I went from surviving to thriving. We got Port Jervis in a good place. So I lived it, and I wanted to share that message with others. So that message is all about, you can be human. You don't have to be perfect. People think Andrew Marotta can do it easy, right? Well, it wasn't easy. Maybe some of it comes easy now, right? I've been given the gift of gab, this mouth. Some people tell me to zip it, but I'm trying to impact other people. I'm trying to get that message out, and I've fallen in love with that. I stepped away from refereeing because I fell in love with working with school leaders and meeting people like you and kind of getting this word out that you don't have to be perfect. It's not perfect. All you got to do is keep trying your best. And sometimes you feel like you're surviving. Sometimes, you'll get to thriving. And Jared, here's another one that goes with that. I love it. If you're listening, get a pen. It's called the 5 SWs, Jared. I love it. Dr. Gilbert helped me with this, right? Again, from Montclair State University. The 5 SWs. Sometimes it will. Sometimes it won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Stick with it. You don't have to be perfect every day, Jared. You got to be perfect in your next parent meeting. You got to be perfect in your next observation. You got to be perfect in your next faculty meeting. You got to be perfect at your next board meeting. Not all the time, not every time, just the next time. And that's all about that mindset of surviving and thriving.
So that's the name of that first. Let's talk about the first book for a few minutes. That's the name of of your first book. And I know your second book kind of has the similar title, but let's talk about that first book. I enjoyed it. We talked about it on your show. You sent me a couple copies and I just ate it up real quick. I'm going to ask you a couple specifics about it, but why should people check out your book?
Yeah, I love it. And I appreciate you liking it, right? Here's that first one. And I've been fortunate enough.
Oh, there you go.
I connected with Routledge, Ion Education. So there is a second edition with how many new tips in there? 19 more tips. And so we kept the same cover or similar cover, but a little different theme there. But I was fortunate to connect with them. But really, Jared, whether you're a first-year principal or when we change the name to the school leader, because it's more than that. You're a teacher leader. You're an assistant principal. You're a superintendent. There's all leadership tips in there, but there's tips on as simple as picking up paper on the floor when you're walking by, to greater concepts about treat every kid as if they're your kid. There's things that I did over these 16 years to go from surviving and thriving. Those are things that help turn Port Jervis around. Not just Andrew Marotta, but our whole school community. Again, from our custodian to our superintendent, who are helping do these things. Mike Rydell, our current superintendent, he's got a building project passed. He got a COVID vaccine thing happening here. We've got so many great things happening. But it's all of those people. So there's stories in there, Jared. There's inspiration. I tell stories of my mom and dad. Again, my dad running the pharmacy, my mom and dad going to my ball games as a kid, and what that meant to me. But their stories, their leaderships, their tips, their tricks, their hacks, and things that worked for me.
You know what I really liked about it? I feel like what you got just short, digestible chunks of just each one brings a different idea. And some of them might work and some of them might not work for your setting. But I really feel like that is the future of books, or I just feel like there's more and more books that are going to come along that I can sit down for 10 minutes and pick up 3 tips and I can put it back down and come back to it the next night. A lot of books are just these long, drawn out 200 pages of 3 or 4 concepts. But I love that about your book. It's a quick hitters, get in, get out, get some great things and implement them the next day. So two of the things, I think I sent you these ahead of time. I read through your book, I took some notes, and I looked through it again a few weeks ago, and I was like, what are my 2 favorite, because I knew this was coming up, what are my 2 favorite things that I have read nowhere else that I read in your book? And these are the things that I came away with, and I want you to explain on a little bit more. Okay. The first one that I've never read anywhere else, and I read it in yours, and I was like, that makes sense, is take care of items and issues for your bosses right away. You cannot miss your boss's stuff. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, and you're a superintendent, Jared, and you know that, right? I want to be on your team. I want you as the superintendent to know that Andrew Marotta is dialed in. I want you to know that my mindset is, how can I help you? Not what do you want, right? I've had strong parents. I've had strong coaches, right? I've played sports my whole life. I've had strong referee supervisors. I got a strong wife. I know that when they ask me to do something, they want it done, and they want it done well. I also believe in the concept of simplifiers versus complicators. Jared, probably your whole staff of who you could go to if you want something done and you want it done right. You know who you could call at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night and say, I need you to pick me up at the airport, or I need you to come and da-da-da-da-da. Who you calling? Because I want you to call me, because that's the type of leader I want to be, someone that can be counted on. So when the soup calls, Jared, sorry, I got to go, right? I got to go. And I take those calls because I want to be that guy. When I was on the team, right, I wasn't the best player, Jared. I also like the mindset of I didn't want to be the best player on the team, and I certainly wasn't. But I want to be the best one for the team. I want to be the guy that people want to work with. I want to be the principal that parents want. I want my kid to go to your school. That's what I want. So, but when the boss calls, I want him to know that I'm ready for him. And I also tell my bosses, if I'm screwing up, you better tell me and come and say, Andrew, you jacked this up, because my answer is going to be, that's my bad. I'll get it right the next time. So, but the bosses, we all have bosses, right? Unless you're a free agent, unless you're an entrepreneur, unless you're on your own, we all have somebody to answer to. And again, my parents, my coaches, and now in my role here, I'm even the superintendent, right, Jared? You have to answer to those board members, right? You have to answer to them. So we all have bosses. I take my boss's stuff.
Yeah, I'm reading, and I'm looking at how you finished up that paragraph, and it says, if you miss a couple times, they will start to doubt you and lose trust in you. And that's just so true, that you only get so many chances to prove yourself to your boss. And if you blow those chances, they're going to stop trusting you pretty quick, because they got bigger fish to fry than having to worry about something getting accomplished. So I hadn't read that before. It makes so much sense. I feel that all the time. And sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, well, geez, shouldn't they respond to my stuff a little quicker? Or if I ask them to do something, I'm like, I would hope it kind of raises to a high level of importance, So I just really appreciated reading that, because it's really justified and reinforced my thinking around those things. The second passage that I also loved, that it's so simple, but I hadn't actually read it anywhere else, and I want to hear you explain a little bit more. It said, buy fundraising stuff from the school. Don't be cheap. Yes, it adds up, and you feel like every time you turn around, you are buying something else, but it is part of the job. Why did you write this?
Yeah, when I got here, right, and I see the kid walking down the hall. Hey, Mr. Marotta, will you buy a shirt? Yeah. And the next day, hey, Mr. Marotta, will you buy, the chocolate candies? Yeah. Like, and all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, like this is like a fundraising machine here. Like, holy cow. And what is it going towards? It's going towards their yearbooks. It's going towards their junior semi-prom, their proms. It's going towards different things. It's going towards scholarships. People look at the administrators, right? Generally, they make more money than everyone else, right? So they,
true.
This is your community, right? I'm not going to the casino and gambling it away. You're participating. I don't buy 10 of everything, but I try to buy one of everything. I don't think I can ever leave Port Jervis. I don't want to leave Port Jervis, but I don't think I can ever leave, Jared, because I probably have 8,607 shirts. And today I don't have it on because but I wear a Port Jervis shirt all the time. And but if the principal is not going to buy it, who's going to buy it? And I want the kids to know that. And hey, you get a write-off from it. But you're supporting the kids, and if they're going out trying to fundraise, it's funny, after you have the assembly, right, and they gave out the fund, they all run right, Mr. Marotta, because they know I'm going to buy one. So that's it. Yeah,
that's cool. It's such a small little thing, and I've blogged about that too. I do feel like there's a lot of leaders out there who are cheap, and it just drives me nuts. It really does. And I read it in your book, and I was like, thank you for putting that in print and doing what you do. And let's talk about your new book, The Partnership: Surviving and Thriving, set to release this spring, it sounds like. What can readers expect in that book?
So again, you asked where the surviving and thriving came from. Where did the principle come? Same thing, Jared. What have I been doing over this 16 years? You asked about the graduation rate, right? All of those things have been about relationships. Now more than ever, even with COVID, right? Where the kids are separated now. They're home, they're remote. It's all about the relationships. And this is for parents, and this is for schools, right? How can we work together to best serve the kid? So there's a lot of advice in there for parents about how to navigate the schools. So like, here's a scenario. You want to get in touch with your kid's teacher, and you call at noon and you don't hear back from them. And now it's 3:30 and you're angry, and you go on Facebook and you say, Dr. Jared Smith, he is such a, and you destroy him. Mm-hmm. Then the next day you wake up, you find out that Dr. Jared Smith was out because he got COVID, or Dr. Jared Smith was out for the day because he was working at the food pantry, volunteer, whatever it was. Jared couldn't get back to you. And actually what you were complaining about, it wasn't even him. So now you just destroyed this guy, not only one-on-one, but every other educator saw how you treated somebody. And again, is every educator perfect? No. Do educators deserve to be dragged through the mud on social media? No, they do not, right? They don't. You could be unhappy with them, but taking your anger out on social media, you don't think every other one of your kids' teachers sees that and is now afraid to talk to you, or afraid to even maybe joke with your kid because that you might take it in a wrong way? And again, I'm not saying every educator is perfect in everything they do. It's not. But sometimes parents, their reaction, right? Instead of calling up the next day, Mr. Smith, versus, you might be angry, right? Call Dr. Smith the next day. Hey, Dr. Smith, my kid told me he came home, he got punched in the face. Nobody did anything. Like, can you tell me what happened? Do you know what happened? Mrs. Jones, to be honest, I didn't hear that. I don't know about it. Can you give me a little bit of time? Let me go find out what happened, and I'll get back to you. Like, I'm sorry, I did not hear about that. But if they call and just lambaste you, so there's things like that. Be in touch with the guidance counselor, right? You want your kid to go to veterinary school, and all of a sudden it's senior year and you found out the kid only took, one science or a low-level science course, or they didn't even take, you got to take college biology to get in there. Like, and the parent like, what? I didn't know that. Well, did you share your goals? Did you have a conversation? Did you go to the guidance meeting, right? So on the school's end, we're trying to have parents be at those meetings. On the teachers' end, on the parents' end, you got to go. You got to know the guidance counselor. Mm-hmm. Your kid goes to a big school, right? You go in, you know the principal, right? You've met the principal 3 times. Does the principal remember your name? Go up and say, hey, I'm Mike Jones. Nice to see you. He might say, I know you, Mr. Jones. I work really hard on getting the names, and I'm pretty good, but sometimes I'm like,
Sure. Absolutely.
I can't think of the name. So, so it's little things like that, and then it's written very similar. Small, usable tips, for parents, for schools to be a great partnership for their kids.
So if people listening want to get that book, when's it out? Where can they purchase it from? What should they do?
Yeah, we're recording here in March. My hope is that it's going to be out in May. I did publish through EduMatch Publishing, Sarah Thomas, Mandy Frolich, awesome people. Very happy with them and the way that went. So it'll be through EduMatch, but it certainly will be on Amazon.com, and I'll certainly have a link on AndrewMarotta.com as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I'm excited to see book number 2. Well, I guess you said you had the updated edition for the first book, so maybe there's kind of 3 there, but
2 and a half.
All right, sounds good. So tell us real quick about your podcast. You've got a podcast. I appeared on it a few months ago. Had a great time. Just tell us about that. What the podcast is like and where they can check it out at.
Yeah, and I love this world of podcasting and connecting with educators like yourself. And it's great, right? You get to meet so many great people. I listened to a number of yours. You had Todd Whitaker on a few weeks back, and you've had great guests. And it's an honor for me to be with you. The group project, you're bringing people together, and it's great. Mine's called Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Hashtag ELB. It's live. I do mine live. I'm used to being live, right? All my games I refereed, they were live. You had a mistake, the ball popped, You dealt with it. The backboard broke, you dealt with it. The coach got thrown out of the game, you dealt with it. So we deal with, live issues, technology. You and I had I had some technology issues here tonight, but it happens. But I love it. And I'm meeting educators. I'm meeting business people. I've had doctors on there. I've had my siblings on there. My mom came on. I got this, but it's a wide range of people. It's not just educators. And I love it. I enjoy meeting them. And again, try to get practical takeaways from the guests.
So if they want to check that out, should they go to your website to start or your Facebook page, or where do you want them to go?
Or as anywhere they can, right? Social media, it's on iTunes. Certainly my website is a place you could sign up. If you like it, Jared, the positive reviews help. But yeah, I do push it out on social media as well. And I enjoy that. I really do. I'm going to start doing a second one. You and I didn't talk about this, Jared, a shorter one based on storytelling. I told some great stories today.
Yeah, you did.
A lot of stories in my book, but I'm going to just do shorter ones, 5-10 minutes on, and I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to, talk about like that paradigm shift. I talked about the keys, changed my life, really. Yeah. So
very cool. Very cool. Hey, let's ask you let's do one more question here, with kind of on the leadership education side, and then we'll switch over to personal growth to finish out the show here. What do you think, what separates good administrators from great administrators?
Great question. I'll start with something that you do. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. I think you have to be well-read. I love what you're doing on your site, Jared. You give those book excerpts and you basically write something. I saw Jared Smith top 100 book list. I said, I got to get on that. I was thrilled and honored to make it,
Yeah.
But you got to be a reader. You got to get tidbits. I am reading The Way of the Shepherd now. It's a thin little book. Loved it. And it's a great story about leadership of a farmer who takes care of the sheep, right? And it's really good. Todd Whitaker on your program said, you asked him, Todd, you got 50 books. What are your favorites? And he told you. I had read What Great Principals Do Differently. Mm-hmm. I had never heard of The Ball. Never heard of it. Mm-hmm. Never. And I read The Monkey, and I read all that. I ordered it right away. It was fantastic. It was about educators that maybe they kind of lost a little luster. And the point of it is, don't take your eye off the ball. And Todd tells a story about a business that kind of went under, but how it revived itself, right? Again, back to that surviving and thriving. Mm-hmm. So I think you got to be well-read. I think you got to deliver more than expected. Jared, you talked about Andrew, you got a lot of stuff, the podcast. Like, I want to do more than expected. I think you got to serve other people. This is about helping other people, impacting their lives. I love Joe Sanfilippo. Joe, if you're listening, I think you had him on, Jared. If you hadn't, get him on your list. What does Joe talk about? The power of the interactions, right? The power of a single interaction. Joe talk about. So you got to be well-read. You got to do more than expected. What do good chefs do? Good chefs cook with fresh foods. They cook different foods, and they're amazing with spices, right? What are the spices that we have as school leaders, right? Do you always, are you screaming and yelling all the time? Are you in your office with a suit and tie all the time? You got to have a bunch of different spices, because not everybody likes the same food. We talked about being well-read. Well, I try to be well-read, but I'm well TED Talked. I love TED Talks. Malcolm Gladwell has an amazing TED Talk on spaghetti sauce. And Malcolm Gladwell tells the story in this thing about this guy trying to get the best spaghetti sauce. And he surveyed, and he did this, and he did taste tests. And, the end result, I don't know if you saw that podcast. The end result was, there's no one perfect spaghetti sauce. Everyone likes something different. People like chunky. People like sweet. People like garlic and tomato. People like with meat. People like pesto. There's variety. You got to have different spices. One of the blogs I wrote that I love, not every hammer needs a nail. Not every nail needs a hammer. Sorry.
Yep.
You got to use a different tool. So you got to have a variety. Back when I refereed, Jared, the best referees, anybody could blow a foul, right? An easy violation, it's a foul, right? Anybody could do that. But it's knowing when to call the right call at the right time of the right, the game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that little bump on a tie game with 10 seconds left, is that little bitty bump, do you call that? If you take that clip by itself, is it a foul? Yeah. In that setting, at that moment, at that time, is that good for the game? You need to know that as a school administrator of when to blow the whistle and when not to, when to use the spice and when not to. I think you have to do that. And the last thing, Jared, I think you have to have something else, right? You focus on your wellness, your writing. You're all in at your school. I'm all in here. I love my community, my school. I'm all in. But I do other things. Because if you're constantly doing that and you can't get away from that, and you're waking up in the morning and thinking about this, and you don't have anything else, you're going to burn yourself out. It's too much. You got to have something to counteract. A lot of people used to ask me, how do you do the refereeing and that? How do you do? They're both so stressful. They canceled each other out. My brain, when I was in the game, wasn't thinking about school. When I kicked the call and I drove home afterwards and I went to bed and I'm at school the next morning, I'm not thinking about the kicked call. So having something else to do it gives you good perspective. So I know I said a lot there, but those are some things that I think separate you.
Well, yeah, that's great. If you're joining us late here, this is episode 56 with Andrew Marotta, principal, author, consultant, has I forgot to mention earlier, you got a newsletter too. So make sure to sign up for that there as well. But just has a wealth of knowledge, just as you can tell, if you've been listening, just super energetic and has a lot of great ideas. So we've covered a lot of leadership, a lot of education. This is kind of the last 15 or so minutes here. We always dig into some personal growth, kind of like on your show. It's a little bit more quick hitters for these last 8 or 9 questions here. And I'm just kind of curious on a lot of these things because we've kind of covered a few of these already. So first question, we start off with food. We've been talking a little bit about food, the spaghetti sauce. And okay, if listeners visit your city, Port Jervis, and I know it's a smaller town. I don't know if you feel comfortable to stay in one place here, but what's one place they've got to check out?
You're talking food?
Well, we've done food. You can do whatever. I kind of like hearing one restaurant if we can.
Yeah,
if you feel comfortable. But also, hey, you mentioned the river. You mentioned just a beautiful city there. Where's a place you got to go?
Yeah, and I love this community, and we're doing great things. We're moving in the right direction. A lot of economic growth. Our mayor, our superintendent, the police chief, and that's another thing you asked about this community. I got everyone's number in here, Jared. Everybody. I got the funeral service. I got the postal, everybody, right? And that's it. But we have Point Peter, which is a beautiful mountain that overlooks the river and the cities. It looks fantastic. Any of those fancy Audi commercials, Porsche commercials, where you see them driving on a beautiful curvy road, it's called the Hawk's Nest, and it's here in Port Jervis. There is a beautiful brick wall built up on the side of the Delaware, and it's a curvy road. If you Google the Hawk's Nest, a lot of famous car commercials are filmed there. It's a great spot to take a drive, and they have a lot of overlooks of the Delaware. You got to go down the Delaware, right? And then certainly you get an ice cream at the Creamery here in Port Jervis, a famous ice cream place. And I have a lot of favorite restaurants. They all take care of us. But the one who leads the way in taking care of Port Jervis has got to be Port Jervis Pizza. They give us so many donations. They've done so much for us. Really a great friend to the school. So not only the food, but the generosity that they've done. And they're award winning. So Port Jervis Pizza.
Awesome. All right. Hey, next question. What is one up to $50 purchase you have made in the last year that has made life easier?
Yeah, I love that question. I love to hear what people talk about. I got two things. One, my daughter got it for Christmas. As you said, I got a lot going on. She got me a dashboard stickum thing. Like I'll get in the car, I'll throw my sunglasses on the dashboard, on, my phone. It's like a sticky pad for the dashboard, and the stuff doesn't fly around the car. I love it. And the other one is this phone case, right? We all have phone cases, right? But I'm trying to simplify. I'm trying to, I got my license, my credit card. I hope you don't get my credit card number. It holds 3 cards. So I've really kind of stopped carrying cash, but it's all right here. So I don't have the George Costanza wallet, Seinfeld reference, but it really slimmed me down a little bit. So those are 2 I would say.
So, okay. So for those of you who are watching the video, you could see the cell phone case. Is there a certain brand, do you know, or is there a certain, like, if we want to search for that, because it seems very convenient and it seems like a great hack.
Smartish is the name of it.
Okay.
Smartish. And again, I found it on Amazon. But Jared, I got to mention a friend of mine. You mentioned under $50. Well, for $20, and you tasted them, you could get amazing, fresh, homemade cookies from New York delivered to Iowa, delivered anywhere in the country, 2-day delivery. Halvesies cookies. You mentioned them on our pre-show. But my friend David Maffei, you want to send a nice gift to somebody, you want to help them out, Halvesies cookies. It's a small business. He vacuum seals them. And Jared, I don't know if you want to give a review, but you tasted those.
It was awesome because what you get is halvesies. You get half a cookie and you get like maybe a dozen. I don't know how many it was. And there's different flavors. And what I did was warm them up in the microwave. And you mentioned ice cream earlier. I love a warmed up cookie and some ice cream on a Saturday night, watching a little Netflix. So they were good. If it's a 5-star review, it's a 5 stars. Halvesies. Hey, if they go to your website, I know there's some discount that you run it. Can they get a discount from your website still?
Yeah, and it's on there. It's either Marotta 15 or Marotta 20. I forgot which one it is, but it's one of those. And I think the link is right on my site, but it's also halvesiescookiecompany.com.
Good stuff. No, it's good stuff.
One of those. But yeah, there is a discount. Good job remembering that.
Okay, so hey, you mentioned a few books earlier. I mean, you're a well-read guy. I appreciate the kind words about me being well-read. But you've read in our conversation before the show and during the show, you've listed like 5 or 6 books, not to mention the 2.5 books that you've written. What is the one book that has greatly influenced your life?
That's a great question. There's a lot. I do try to read. I got dunked on the head when I was little. I had a terrible concussion, so I lose a lot. But that's what I loved about your book. And I asked how you write the stuff down. So I try to write them down. I love Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I thought that was great. I also really liked Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I like Malcolm Gladwell. Outliers really, kind of did some things about how to be successful by doing some different things. I like another book too, not very well known. Make the Big Time Where You Are. Everybody always thinks they want to go to the next place and the next school, the next big thing. I've been in Port Jervis. I don't really have a desire to leave, right? I've wanted to make Port Jervis the big time, and I look back at the work we've done, and I think we've done that. So I would say those 3 books, Jared, until I get yours here, and I know that'll be the next one.
Well, when you said Tipping Point, I was like, okay, I know in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, I wasn't sure which one, he talks about broken windows theory, and he talks about at what point do you get over the hump. And I just thought about, with your graduation rate. So I can totally see why Tipping Point, why that would be your top book. I could totally see that. So
Yeah,
if you like what we talked about earlier, that broken windows theory, kind of that idea of turning around a school, like Tipping Point's a great place to start. So great book. Okay. You showed me the cell phone earlier. Now I'm curious. What is one phone app that has positively impacted your life?
Yeah, so very simple. I would say the Google app, and specifically Google Docs. I mentioned ADD. It's a superpower, not a disability. We spoke about all the stuff I'm doing. Well, how do I do it all, Jared? Well, the leadership sparks. I shoot a little video, and that's not through Google, but that's the phone. But specifically, I do a lot of my writing talk to text. So on the way home tonight, I think I'm going to write a blog about this experience and about the work you're doing. And I love your book reviews. I'm going to hit talk to text, and I can just talk. I have someone who helps me edit it. I have someone who helps me format it on MailChimp, and then boom, gets logged up. So all I got to do is hit on talk to text, Google Docs, boom. You're a fitness guy, Jared. How do you write the book? How do you do it? The oxygen gets the blood flowing. I want to exercise. I want to write. I want to have some time for myself. I do it all at the same time. I'm on the treadmill. I'm on the elliptical. I can write chapters in my books. And that's why those chapters are like small chunks, because I'll write them and then I'll close it and then I'll go on to the next one. So the Google Doc talk to text app.
That's awesome. I've started to do that. I mean, I had no idea that you would share that. And I haven't done it nearly as much as you have, but I feel like if you can just talk it out, and I do the exact same, it's uncanny what you're describing, because I do the same thing. I don't have much of a commute, so I don't know, but when I am going out of town, a lot of times I'll pop out the cell phone, put in that Google Apps, and just start saying what I want it to go in the book or what I want to go in a blog post. So that is awesome. I'm so glad you shared that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
First of all, what are the major gas stations, convenience stores in your neck of the woods?
We have Turkey Hill up here in Northeast Pennsylvania. It's funny, you asked about Port Jervis. We're right on the border of New Jersey. You could touch on Tri-States Rock and be standing in all three states, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. But right in New Jersey, across the river, the gas is cheaper. So there's like literally 6 gas stations all right in New Jersey. So it hurts the Port Jervis community because they're not getting gas there because it's always cheaper in New Jersey. So everyone just dips over there. So everyone you could think of, they have. But I'm a Sheetz guy. I like Sheetz. You could go in, you get something to eat, you get something to drink. I love Sheetz. Yeah.
So when you go on Sheetz, the question is, what's your go-to item? What when you go into Sheetz, what are you getting? What do you got to get there?
Well, and I saw you ask that question. I grew up in my dad's pharmacy working, right? You go into a convenience store, you're spending a little bit more money on those things. And again, when you need them, but I'm more of a Panera Bread guy, Jared. I travel a lot. I drive a lot. I know where every Panera Bread is. I use the Panera Bread app. I order it because I know I could get a healthy meal. I love the soups. I love their healthy shakes. I could get a salad. And if I'm going somewhere, right, you're an eater, you're a healthy guy. You don't want to have a big meal, but if you get the 2 for $2, or you get a little sandwich up front with an apple, and then afterwards you can keep the salad in the car because it's cold up here in the Northeast. Then you can have the salad afterwards, and use your little double meal. So I'm more of a Panera Bread guy versus a convenience store.
Okay, I like it. Next question. Can you recall a job you applied for but did not get? And what did you learn from this experience?
Yeah, great question. I think we learn a lot from our failures. I've been blessed, Jared, really talking about jobs. Full disclosure, I tell the story in the book, and I love telling stories. The first job I got, I was observing in a school in New York City. I was a master's degree student. I had just graduated in May. So it was like October. I have my sweatshirt on, I got jeans on, and I'm looking around saying, this is a rough school. I would never want to teach here. I'm going to teach in a place where teachers want to teach there and kids want to be there. I'm never going to work here. Literally a day or two later. So I'm there like 2 weeks. It's October. I just graduated college. Andrew Marotta, please report to the office. And I get called to the office. I'm like, did I get paged? And they were like, oh, you're Marotta. Come in. The principal wants to see you. And the principal was like, the teacher just quit. You've been observing the classes. You're there. Like, do you want the job? I was like, what? What are you talking about? And I'm not even certified. He's like, you'll be certified tomorrow. I'm like, can I make a phone call? And I called my parents And my dad, I'll never forget, he said, Andrew, it's not how great the opportunity is. It's how great you are to the opportunity. You're going to do a fantastic job. You take that job. I never student taught. Boom, I got that job.
Wow.
I was off and running. I got a bunch of funny stories how I got hired. So I did get the jobs. Where I didn't get the jobs, Jared, was in my refereeing career.
Oh, okay.
In my athletic career, I learned what it was like to sit on the bench. I learned what it was like to not be a starter. I made the teams. I made my college basketball team. I remember trying out as a freshman on my freshman high school basketball team. 100 people tried out. They took 12, and I was fortunate enough to make the team. But I didn't play. I wasn't a star. And then refereeing, right? If you're a sports guy, we're going to watch March Madness. Mm-hmm. Those guys that are working the NCAA tournament, they're the best of the best of the best, right? Those playoff games I didn't get. The game, everybody, I want the Duke, North Carolina game. I want the Iowa State game. But if I'm doing a Division III school in Iowa and I'm doing that game in Iowa, that game is the most important to those kids. Not the Iowa State game that I didn't get, but maybe that junior college game. So I learned about it's not the ones you don't get, it's the ones that you do get that you do need to do a great job. You need to make the big time where you are. That game that you were refereeing, that to me, that was the most important things to those kids. So I couldn't think, well, why didn't I get that game? Why didn't I get the Duke game? Why didn't I get the North Carolina game? I got this game. Well, I'm going to do a great job. So I wouldn't say there were jobs I didn't get, but I never looked at, well, why don't I have that? Okay. I got this, and I'm going to do a great job with this. I'm going to make this the big game. And that's the way I looked at it. But I've been fortunate with jobs, Jared. The second job I got teaching, it's another funny story. Even the day I told you when I got hired here, there was a fight in the cafeteria. I jumped up. I got the job.
Crazy hiring stories. I mean, nothing crazy. Like I got hired in June and, like nothing normal, but go ahead. Go ahead with the other one.
Yeah. So I volunteer in Italy, 1999 to 2000, I volunteered. My wife and I went to Italy. She went to England. We were engaged. We weren't together. So I left New York City teaching. I come back. We're getting married that year. So now it's September. I need a job. It's like the end of August. I was volunteering the whole year. I need a job. I'm looking for a science job. I was a science job, so I couldn't get a job. It's the end of August. I'm getting married. Well, the guy, it's a middle school in New York City. The guy says, well, we don't have a science job, but, you were in Italy. Do you speak Italian? I'm like, sì, yeah, parlo italiano. Hey, oh, hey. And I spoke slang Italian. I learned it while I was there. I never studied it. I spoke Spanish. He's like, you speak Italian? I'm like, yeah. He's like, fine, you be the Italian teacher. I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing. I got my butt kicked. The lady came in. I've never had a panic attack, Jared. I'm not a nervous guy, but I never had a panic attack. The lady comes in to do the observation. I was like, I just started yelling out words and calling on kids. And then it was as if you took that bottle of water you were drinking and poured it over my head. I just started profusely sweating. Wow. like unbelievable. And I said, can I talk to you? She's like, right now? I'm like, yeah. She's like, in the middle of your observation? I'm like, yeah, right now. And we go in the hallway. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't. I'm a fake. She's like, Andrew, you were doing great. What are you talking about? The kids were loving it. I'm like, no, And she's like, calm down. And I had a panic attack. It was crazy. And they changed the course to Italian culture. And I got to tell stories about my time in Italy, and it was great. And then in January, a science job opened up. I got the science job, and off I went. So, it was another funny story of being hired for a job I really couldn't do. So both of those first jobs I really couldn't do, Well,
I think you've got some great stuff for your new podcast that you're starting. The stories that you're going to tell. I mean, it's just, the fact that you got the starts to some of these jobs are just fascinating, and they're like not anything you ever hear about. And then you've got like 3 or 4 of them all in your career. I was going to ask you, as a ref, I wanted to ask you one reffing question.
Yeah, I love it.
And you probably hear all the time, like, tell your best story. I don't want to know that. I want to know, who is the best player you ever reffed?
Great question. Yeah, most people ask, what was the biggest game you ever did?
Yeah, see, I figured that was overblown. I want to know, like, who is the best player you had the pleasure of reffing?
Yeah. Well, and the question I usually ask is, what was the biggest game? And I usually, the game of that night, right? Just I talked about.
Okay.
That's the biggest game, is the game of that night. Some of the players, Jared, in the ACC were just phenomenal. Doc Rivers' son, who was in the NBA for a while, I think he's still in the NBA, was amazingly lightning quick. Tyler Hansbrough, North Carolina, was incredible. I'm trying to think of some, as a referee, Jared, and again, here's another story. They asked the heart surgeon after he operated on Bill Clinton, was he nervous about operating on Bill Clinton? And he said, we knew it was the president, but I wasn't nervous because I was treating him just like I would anybody else. So a similar type of thing is with refereeing. I never looked at it that I'm refereeing this kid, or I'm refereeing that guy. We knew who the best players were. They were really just the colors on the jerseys, Jared, white and blue, green and yellow. I knew who the best players were, but I never wanted to get caught up in, ooh, that's Jared Smith from Iowa. Like, because now you're looking at him like, and do you not call the foul on him because it's Jared Smith from Iowa? So I could never look at it like that. So they kind of blurred away. But what I'll say is this, Jared, reffing the service academies was an honor. That these kids were going in the Army and the Navy. I refereed the Army-Navy basketball game. I refereed the Air Force-Army game. So maybe not the best talented basketball players, but some of the hardest working, most respectful kids. People say it's a headache to referee, right? Everyone's yelling at you. Those games were the biggest honor, and those kids were the best kids in my book. And I remember those games fondly. I live an hour from West Point. And I loved doing those service games, and those were some of the best.
Well, when those service football games come up, a lot of people will say, those are amazing rivalries. Like, you just got to check it out. Now, I haven't really seen any of the service basketball games, but I can only imagine how underrated of a rivalry, but a positive, like they respect one another rivalry. But that's a really cool story there.
Well, one more story.
Yeah.
I'm doing the Army-Navy game. It's at Army, and we're all standing there. There's a million flags. There's a million, and forgive me, I don't know the rankings, right? General, I don't know the rankings. I don't know what. But the coach of Army at the time comes over. They're doing all these introductions, and he whispers and he says, that is the lieutenant commander, captain in charge, or whoever the highest guy in the Army. You saw him, and then with all these and he goes, don't F it up. And he patted me on the butt, and he walked through. It's like, oh my God, like the superintendent of the Army was there. It was cool. It was funny. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Gosh, that's cool. Like I said, hey, if you want to hear, I'm sure some of these stories are going to make your podcast. So make sure you check that out here in the near future.
And Jared, we talked about writing and reading. The next book is going to be called Tales of the Hardwood, and they're refereeing stories, they're leadership refereeing stories that I learned from my time on the court. And I, again, in less than 24 hours, I had 80 of them just thinking of all these amazing experiences I've had. So that'll be fun for people that have a sports-minded leadership type of thing. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here. I'm going to let you get out of here. So you've got the book, you've got, school, you're leading a school. You're doing some blogging, what's your one big goal right now? If you could just pick one, what is it?
Well, I want to be a great father and a great husband first. My family means everything to me. They've allowed me to do these things. So that's my goal, is that I want to be the best I can be at that job, right? At those jobs. And then jobs is not the right word, but my parents were phenomenal. I was blessed today to have my in-laws here in my community, my school community. They got their COVID shots. That was emotional for me. to be able to help them. So I've been blessed to have not only my own parents, but my in-laws. So that's the overall goal, to be a great husband and great father.
You
Go
mentioned
ahead.
earlier 2 kids, right?
3, I got 3.
Oh, 3. I'm sorry. So tell us about your kids real quick.
Yeah, Claire, Matthew, and Tessa. They're wonderful kids. Again, Jared, we're telling stories. If I'm telling too many, I'm sorry. But my wife wrote in my ring here, MTC, my true companion. If you ever, it's on the inside. You can't see it.
Okay.
But Mark Cohn, right? It's a beautiful song. It's a love song. My true companion, Mark Cohn. And she wrote that. And then one day we were painting cubbies for our kids, right? And they were like, 6, 4 and 2, 6, 4 and 1, whatever. And they were little. And Claire, which one do you want? Well, I want that one. Matthew, which one do you want? And Tessa was still little. She got the 3rd pick. Well, Claire picked this one all the way over here. Matthew picked that one. Tessa got the one in the middle. So now I'm painting the initial on it. And one of those initials come out, Jared, MTC. And that was a paradigm moment. That was a wow. She wrote this in my ring 20 years ago. And now our children, without planning that out, are Matthew, Tessa, and Claire. So I'm not big on tattoos. I don't have a lot of tattoos, but I have a tattoo right here that says MTC, and my wife has the same one there. So that means a lot to us, and that's my family, and that MTC. I got surviving and thriving. Well, MTC is my family. It's my true companion, which is my wife, but then my children, not unintentionally, and I do everything intentionally, turned out there. But a goal with all of this, Jared, is to have an amazing impact on school leaders. I want school leaders to, in the movie The Natural, I love The Natural, right? Roy Hobbs. And they say, Roy, what is it that you want from this? And he said, well, when I walk down the street, I want people to say, there goes Roy Hobbs, the best there ever was. Well, I want people to say, in this community, there goes Andrew Marotta. He's a great principal. There goes Andrew Marotta. He helped me become a great principal. I read his book. He helped me. I'd like that. And I'd love for those books to be a New York Times bestseller. That's a little goal I have. I'd love for that to get on the bestseller list.
Well, hey, Andrew, we covered a lot of stuff in the last 70 or so minutes. Is there anything else that you want to make that we didn't get to that you want to share?
We touched on a lot, Jared. I'm a lot of Marotta. I'm sorry if I went too fast or I told too many stories. I get going. I got a passion about it. How about we end with one last story?
Yeah, go for it, man. The floor is yours.
We end with one last story, and this is a powerful story. It's a real story. So, and again, if it's the one last thing, it's about having a significant impact. And here's a story that I'll never forget. Right. So, it's 2007. Forgive the year if I'm getting it wrong. 2006. 8. I lost my. I won't tell the ending yet.
Somewhere.
My dad is an amazing guy. This is on YouTube, Jared. Mr. Joe Marathon. If people are listening and they want to watch it, Mr. Joe Marathon. Jared, you could get your ice cream and your the cookie, and you can watch with your wife. It's 9.5 minutes, but. My dad was a kidney transplant. My brother gave him a kidney. He was a colon cancer survivor. He went legally blind due to diabetes. He was a pharmacist, and he went through all of those struggles. But through it all, to honor the kidney, he said, well, I'm going to start walking. You're a fitness guy. He was not. I'm going to start walking. We said, Dad, you're going to get hit by a car. Like, you're going to get killed. What are you doing? And he's like, well, I got to get in shape. I got to honor this kidney. So he starts walking. He's walking all over New York City, all over. He's going to get hit by a car. It was like Mr. Magoo. But he's walking, and he says, well, I'm going to do the marathon. We're like, what? You can't do the marathon, But again, you asked about goals. You asked about, he does the marathon through a group called Achilles, and that helps handicapped runners. So my brother and I became his guides, and we did it with him, and we walked it. He didn't run it. You're a runner. He walked it. He did a second one. He did a third one. And on that third one, Jared, he always wanted to beat his time. But on that third one, it wasn't his day. and his timing was off. You could tell something was wrong. It took us an extremely long time, and he kept just saying, let's just finish. Let's just finish. The other times he wanted to beat the time. I wanted to get a better time. I want to get a better time. I want to get better. We also had a videographer with us, and who was documenting this. And they took pictures, they took video. And sadly, we did finish the marathon. Got to be with my dad. I drive 2 hours back home to Milford, and sadly, my dad passed away at the end. He had a heart attack at home. He always said he wanted to die at home, and that's what happened. So I was happy I got to get back to see him. He was deceased already, but I still got to hold him and touch him before, the coffin and all of that kind of stuff. My dad would always do this, Jared, real Italian, like on your face. If he met you, he'd say, let me see that red hair, get over there. And he'd grab your face. And so I was grateful for that. But I spent the week there with my family, and it was emotional. I haven't asked you about your parents, Jared, if they're alive, and but it was emotional. So we spent the whole week, a big Italian, funeral, wake, 2 days. It was exhausting. And you said I got a lot of energy, and I'm prideful of that. But I was exhausted. Sunday night, I go to bed early. I wake up Monday. I couldn't go to work. I was exhausted. So this is the whole week. So my dad dies on a Sunday, New York City Marathon. The whole week, I'm in New York. The next weekend, I'm home. I couldn't go to work Monday. I was just drained, Jared, empty. So I said, I got to go to work. I got to go. So I was out 6 days of school. Imagine, right? 6 days of school. I go in the next day, 77 voicemail messages, 77. I got there at 6 a.m, checking the message, pick up the phone, 6 a.m, 77 voicemail messages. The first message, Jared, that was the Monday. My dad died on a Sunday. It was the Monday morning. So right the next morning, 6:30 in the morning, it was my superintendent, John Exantis. And he said, Andrew, Exantis, just calling to check how the marathon went with your dad. I know how important it is to you. I know how important your dad is to you. Tell me how it went. Give me a call. That's the first message I heard. And it was like a punch in the face, like, oh my God, and then it just brought, but I kept that message on there for years, and I never forgot that, Jared. And people say, well, what's the big deal? It was a phone call. Here's the superintendent of schools. He didn't know my dad died. He was calling the next day just to ask about it because he knew it was important to me. And I remember that so vividly. I would do anything for that guy. He cared, right? So as a school leader, now I know I have to, you got to care. You gotta know those things. You got to know those things about your people, and you got to ask them. So here he was. The first thing he did on Monday morning was ask me, how did the marathon go with your dad? I knew how important that is for you, and I know your dad's your guy. I can't wait to hear about it. So I always tell administrators, and we can end with that, and forgive me for the long story, Jared, do the extra mile, write the note card, send, the phone call, send the text messages. A lot of times we as school administrators say, I don't want to bother them on a Sunday. Right? But how many people in your district got COVID? Do you reach out to them? Do you check? If a kid loses a parent, do you call? Do you go to the services? Do you send a card? Do you reach out to the kids? Hey, man, Jared, I'm so sorry you lost your mom. That kind of stuff. And those are the things that people remember. The kid might have got a 70 on the test, but nobody cares about that. They care that you knew that the mom passed away and things like that. So, that story means a lot to me. Thank you for allowing me to share it. So the point that we can end on is, don't worry about being a successful school leader. Focus on having a significant impact of those that you serve in your school and your community, and you'll be in a good spot.
That's a great way to end. Now, that story in your book too. I know I've read that. Is that correct?
It's in the book, and I think I put the QR code or maybe just the link for that Mr. Joe Marathon, but it absolutely is in the book.
Yeah.
And those are the type of lessons, right? You're not learning that in administrator class
No.
101.
No, that was one of my favorite stories from your book. Absolutely, was that voicemail that the superintendent left. And you're right. I'm at the YouTube link right now. Joe Marotta, ING Marathon 2008. Is that? Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looking at it right now. Awesome, man. Well, hey, that was an awesome interview. I always enjoy connecting with you. We've kept in touch since your show.
Yeah.
We've emailed. And so I'm just always just enjoy the time we spend together. So thank you so much for giving up. We had, like we mentioned, we had a little bit of technical difficulties before we started, so it's been a little bit longer night, but I appreciate you over on the East Coast. It's about 7:30. So I really appreciate you sticking around and making it happen.
I appreciate you, Jared. It's been a great connection. This is the power of the PLN, right? I met Jared on Twitter and I learned about the work he's doing. I learned about his school community and the tornadoes that went through there and the things that have happened. And Jared's, you're doing great work, man. I think it's great. I love the group project and I'm proud to have been on here.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I gotta get this plugged in here. My computer's about to die here, so I'm gonna have to let you.
A lot of them around.
So I'm gonna get over to a plug-in, but hey, I will. I appreciate it. I'll get this uploaded here soon, and we'll be in touch. All right, Andrew.
Jared, it's been an honor to be on, man. Keep rolling.
All right, thanks, man.